A young artist discovers her identity and suddenly becomes wanted by an ancient family. Will she be able to run away and save herself from them? Hello, and welcome to our channel. We'll be doing a recap and review of the horror movie titled The Invitation. Let's check it out. It's a busy night for Evie, where she works as a waitress for an event. There, Evie learns of a way by which she can find and reconnect with lost members of her family. She returns home and reminisces about the lonely life that she is left to live all by herself. As soon as she is done thinking, Evie takes a long look at the portraits beside her bedside and finally makes up her mind to find out who the extended members of her family were. She goes on to mail her blood sample to the company who is going to analyze her DNA samples and help her reconnect with her lost family. Answers come quicker than Evie expected. While at her best friend's house, she receives a notification from a second cousin who's trying to reach her. She receives the news with a large grin all over her beautiful face. Her best friend also expresses excitement, but also expresses her concern about connecting with a stranger off the internet. Evie quickly debunks it and reminds her that this is family and that she has none. She returns and accepts the invitation to meet her second cousin. The following day is a big one for Evie. She shows up to meet her newly found cousin, Oliver. He's all smiles and very heartwarming, and doesn't look like someone who's going to take her kidneys like Evie's best friend implied. Well, the two obviously have a lot to catch up on, and as they speak over their freshly served meals, Oliver educates Evie on their family history. She's surprised by how important their family is in history. He tells her the idea of her existence is welcomed and anticipated by all, and he informs her of a wedding which he invites her to. Could this be Evie's chance at a real family? You really can't be so sure, and there's only one way to find out. Evie quickly informs him that she has no money to afford a trip to honor the invitation, but Oliver quickly persuades her and hands over an offer for an all-expense-paid trip. Juicy, isn't it? I mean, who says no to an all-expense-paid offer? Not even the Kardashians, and certainly not Evie. Evie feels the love, and she gives in. However, the events that go on from here are crazy. A flight is arranged for Evie by the benevolent Oliver, and she flies down safely and is welcomed by her so-called cousin. He asks about her flight and instantly asks if she is ready for an adventure. It's a short journey from the airport to the mansion where she's going to be lodged, conveyed in an exotic vehicle. Evie can't help but admire the life she is living now. She alights at the castle, which is managed by the lord of the castle, Walt. She finds the castle bubbling with activity as maids who are numbered are brought into the castle alongside fancy glasses for the event. Oliver excuses himself to go invite Lord Walt, who was going to meet their guest. Evie is excited. However, she has no idea that the events that follow will change her life forever. She is admiring the castle when, unfortunately, she stumbles on two maids who were carrying crates of glasses and trips while the glasses shatter. She is embarrassed and assists in packing the shattered glass while apologizing for the situation, learning the names of the two maidens, Dee and Imogene. Soon after, a mysterious-looking man approaches them and addresses the issue harshly. Evie tries to quickly calm the seeming storm by taking responsibility for the event. The man shows no kind gesture as he keeps responding in a harsh tone. Evie reacts back, and the scenario seems to be getting heated now. To calm the burst, two gentlemen walk into the mix. Evie meets Oliver and Lord Walt, who quickly calm the rising nerves. Walt apologizes on behalf of the man, who he refers to as Mr. Field, the butler. Mr. Field also shares his apology as Walt quickly reveals she is one of the expected guests. When Oliver formally introduces Walt to Evie as the lord of the castle, Evie cannot hide her surprise, as that wasn't the image she anticipated. Her eyes lit up as she spoke to the charming Walt. From there, she is escorted and shown her room. The castle looks very big and mysterious with so many statues and weird paintings. Evie is an artist and apparently delights in the paintings. While she is given a little tour inside the castle, she's given access to all other parts of the castle except the library. What's in this mysterious library? She doesn't ask as she walks down to her room and is introduced to her maid, Mrs. Swift. Mrs. Swift goes on to show Evie her room, which gives her a very weird feeling, but she can't seem to place her fingers on just exactly what it is. She finds a portrait on the wall which is identified as being the former lady of the house. Evie finds herself really intrigued by Walt's charm and poise. She discusses it with her best friend. During the discussion at the door, Walt comes to check on her and apologizes for the butler's earlier behavior. The two seem to have chemistry as they lock eyes for a while, and Evie's getting drawn in by Walt's charm. Could this be leading to something? It's a cold night, and Evie, who is tired from a busy day, seeks to retire to bed. Evie sleeps comfortably on the cozy sheets and wastes no time falling asleep, but what happens next leaves Evie very frightened. A wonderful night's rest is quickly cut short as Evie suddenly finds herself in the woods, where a series of terrifying events takes place. She sees the lady in the portrait in blood-soaked attire, and she mutters words silently. Evie is scared by the sight. Next, she sees the lady's head rolling on the floor. Evie snaps and finds out she's just had a dream and it wasn't real. Still terrified, Evie checks the time. It's some minutes to 3 a.m. She stares in silence, but decides to shake the dream off by taking a walk outside her room. She finds the maids arranged and receiving instructions in front of Mr. Swift. It's still dark, and Evie notices a strange presence at her rear. She turns and finds nothing but just darkness. She turns back and finds Mrs. Swift. She gasps in shock. Mrs. Swift talks her into returning to her room and adds that it isn't safe to be out by that time. Evie is interested in what Mr. Field is doing. Mr. Field picks a maid to clean the mysterious library. There is fear in the air as Mr. Field chooses Imogene, maid number 2, to clean the library. Clearly, the butler is up to something strange and dark. Something very spooky happens next. As Evie returns to her room, as Imogene makes her way to clean the library, she receives the shock of her life as she sees something really sinister appear in the library that takes Imogene, who never returns. It's a fresh, eventful, and bright new day at the castle. Evie is awoken by Mrs. Swift, who reminds her of the family reunion. She is excited at the thought of meeting a new family and quickly makes herself ready. Evie walks into a room filled with several people, including Oliver, who welcomes her with a hug. She is showered so much by her newly found family, and she can't help but just feel grateful for finding a family who describes her as a gift. Mr. Field is clearly up to something sinister as he invites 2 maids, including Dee, to help fetch an exotic wine from the wine room. The maids are bothered about his attitude. As they go deep into the room, the unthinkable happens. The same presence appears and takes the 2 maids. What form of evil could this be lurking around the DeVille castle? Evie returns to her room and finds a beautiful dress gifted to her by Walt. She loves the dress and shows her best friend. Just after that, something suddenly hits the window and leaves Evie terrified. Shaken from it, Evie prepares for the dinner party. She walks into the party and a rousing ovation is made for her. Evie meets a new set of people at the party. 2 ladies referred to as the Maids of Honor, Lucy and Victoria. The ladies meet Evie, but Victoria seems to not like Evie as she keeps making very demeaning remarks about her. Lucy, on the other hand, stays warm to her. Still, Evie is not having any of Victoria's degrading manner as she walks off. Walt's arrival is announced, and he walks into the party accompanied by loud claps. He walks straight to Evie and asks her for a dance. She is startled and quite uncomfortable, but it's quite clear now that Evie has fallen for Walt. Victoria seems very envious of Evie and is clearly up to something strange. Evie goes away with Walt from the party and they walk to his art room. Evie is in love with the place, and undenying the chemistry in their eyes, they both share a passionate kiss. After an eventful night, Evie retires to her room to get some sleep. Something begins to lurk around the room, which wakes her from her slumber. She's so terrified as she can see the hands of a creature in her room. Could this be the evil that's been lurking about? Evie tries to flee, but Walt comes to her aid, comforting her and relieving her of her fear. Evie insists she can't pass the night alone. Walt puts her to sleep. Evie wakes up to a note on her bedside from Walt. Still trying to put off the fear from last night, she receives Lucy and Victoria in her room. The duo invites her for a girl's time out. She's receiving a pedicure for her hands while she is engaged in a conversation with Lucy. The two are getting along just before Victoria tensely begins to interrogate her. Evie gets mad at Victoria's constant disturbance and confronts her. Evie walks off pissed and decides to get into the library and confirm the truth by herself. And that is just when she discovers the truth that had been left hidden. Evie opens the library and discovers a paper with her information on it. Evie is threatened and storms out and begins arranging her bags to leave. She agrees to stay as Walt was able to persuade her to stay back while he apologizes and gives her an explanation. The two kiss and spend the night together. The event that happens next is wild. It's the day of the wedding. The families are gathered and Evie is welcomed with such warmth, but she would experience something that she would remember for the rest of her life. She walks into the room and doesn't find a bride or a groom. To her shock, Walt rises and welcomes the guests to their marriage. Evie becomes very uncomfortable and finds out more bizarre events. The neck of a maid is slit and the guests drink from the blood. She is beyond shocked that her new family members are all vampires. She tries to run away, but is stopped and is made to undergo a ritual which is supposed to make Walt and the rest of the members eternal. She is seized and taken away. Victoria locks her in a coffin to begin the ritual. Mrs. Swift comes to Evie's rescue and explains her nightmares. The woman she had been seeing was her great-grandmother, who was also her good friend, and she was made to suffer the same fate till she ultimately killed herself. Mrs. Swift tells her to run away. Evie tries her best to run far away from the castle, but is attacked by Mr. Field. She evades him and keeps running. Will she be able to make it back alive? She makes it out of the castle, but unfortunately finds her way into the hands of a family who works for the DeVille. She is knocked out and is taken back, where Walt seeks to complete the wedding rituals. But this is where the unthinkable happens. Evie takes the oath and drinks the blood of Walt, which automatically gives her extraordinary power. Contrary to what they all thought, Evie stabs Walt and frees Dee. All hell breaks loose. She fights off Walt, but she is suddenly attacked by Victoria. With help from Lucy, she is able to fight off Victoria. Lucy drives Victoria and herself into a spear. Just when Evie thought it was over, she's attacked by the mysterious Mr. Field, who tries to drive a spear through her. But Evie was just quick enough to stab the butler. The final challenge for Evie was Walt, who was choking her by the neck before she was able to toss him into the fire. Evie sees to it that the castle burns down and leaves quite fulfilled. She returns and reunites with her best friend in America. The movie is a great blend of horror, suspense, and fantasy. It's a perfect mix of all. I particularly enjoyed the suspense that it was given off. It was able to make me engage in the storytelling without revealing many of the details, so as to keep one big one till the very end of the movie. I, for one, couldn't predict the events that happened at the end of the movie. However, I had expected a bit of a more detailed ending. I highly recommend this one if you have a thing for horror and mystic movies. This is one movie that'd be ideal for movie night, as it leaves you at the edge of your seat all the way through. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel to be notified when we upload, and don't forget to suggest movies that you want us to recap in the future in the comments down below.